The phone rang from a number I didn't know, and a woman's voice said, "I think your wife is seeing my husband. Can we talk?" I said yes before my brain caught up with my mouth. And then I spent 3 days dreading it because I was certain it was going to be the worst conversation of my life. Two humiliated people in a coffee shop comparing wounds. That is not what happened. 45 minutes and 2 flat whites later, the woman I had every reason to see as the enemy had handed me the one thing no lawyer, no private investigator, and no amount of lying awake at night had been able to give me. A witness. And it turned out a witness was worth more than revenge ever could have been. Let me tell you who's talking, and set 2 rules, because this topic can go bad fast. The story is a composite, and details are changed. The law in it is real, and I'll tell you where it varies, because it varies a lot by state. Rule 1, and it's the important one. This is not a revenge video. I know the setup sounds like the beginning of a plan. 2 betrayed spouses team up to destroy the cheaters. That's the version the internet would want. It's also the version that gets both of you in trouble and feels like ash afterward. What actually happened at that table was quieter and far more useful than revenge, and I'll show you exactly where the line is between the thing that helps you and the thing that blows up in your hand. Rule 2. This is not legal advice. The rules are different in every state, and I am describing what 2 people lawfully did with information they already owned, not a strategy to go get information you don't. If you're living this right now, the single most valuable move in this whole video is talk to your own lawyer before you do anything. And one more thing, because fairness matters even here. Nobody in this story is a cartoon. My wife and her husband made choices with real consequences, and they're still people. This video isn't about hating anyone. It's about what 2 people did with the truth once they finally had it, and about the strange human thing that happens when you meet the only other person who can see what you're seeing. So let me take you to the table, because the emotional part and the legal part both live there. She got there first. I recognized her from the tension in her shoulders before I recognized her face. She had the exact posture I'd been carrying for 2 months, the posture of someone who's been told, repeatedly, that they're imagining things. And here's the first thing that hit me, before a single fact changed hands. I wasn't crazy. For 2 months I had been the only person in my life who believed something was wrong, and every time I raised it, it got turned around on me. I was insecure, I was controlling, I was projecting. You've seen my video on that pattern. It has a name. And sitting across from a stranger who had been fed the identical lines by a different person in a different house was the first time the ground felt solid under me in weeks. That's the part nobody tells you about meeting the other betrayed spouse. The information matters, and we'll get to it. But the first gift is simpler and deeper. You stop being alone with a truth nobody else will confirm. She was my corroboration before she said anything evidentiary at all. Just her shoulders were corroboration. Then we started, carefully, to compare notes. And I want to be precise about what that actually was, because this is the legal heart of it. We did not hack anything. We did not break into accounts. Neither of us had installed anything on anyone's phone, and if we had, I'd be telling you a story about how we torched our own cases, because illegally obtained evidence gets thrown out, and in some states, it's a crime. I've made that video too. What we did was much smaller and completely lawful. She told me what she had seen. The nights her husband said he was working. The charges she'd noticed on their credit card. The hotel name that kept appearing on statements she was fully entitled to read because her name was on the account. And I told her what I had. The pattern of my wife's absences that lined up to the day with those charges. Do you see what just happened? Separately, each of us had half a picture and a spouse telling us we were paranoid. Together, we had 2 independent records that corroborated each other perfectly. Her statements explained my calendar. My calendar explained her statements. Neither of us had to steal a thing. We each just brought what was already lawfully ours and laid it on the table. And that's the difference between what helps you and what hurts you, drawn as a bright line. Evidence you already lawfully possess. Your own accounts, your own memory, things you were entitled to see. Sharing that is fine and powerful. Going and getting what you're not entitled to, that's the trap. We stayed hard on the right side of that line, and it's the only reason the story has a good ending instead of a courtroom disaster. By the time the coffees were cold, I had gone from a man with a bad feeling and no proof to a man with a coherent, corroborated, lawfully held picture of what had been happening. Not because I'd spied, because someone else had lived the other half of it, and we'd simply told each other the truth. But corroboration of the affair, by itself, was almost worthless in my state. And I need to explain why, because it leads to the thing that actually mattered, which wasn't the affair at all. It was the money. Here's the part that deflates most revenge fantasies, and I'd rather you hear it from me than from a lawyer charging you by the hour. In most of the country, proving the affair does very little to your settlement. I live in a no-fault world, and I've made the case before. The court, in the main, does not divide the assets based on who behaved worse in the marriage. You can walk in with airtight proof of the affair and walk out with the division that looks exactly like it would have if nobody had cheated at all. So if the plan is, prove they cheated and the judge will punish them, the plan mostly doesn't work. And a lot of betrayed people spend enormous money and energy chasing a moral verdict the system isn't built to deliver. But there's a door, and it's not the one people expect. The affair itself might be legally irrelevant. The money spent on the affair is a different story entirely. It's called dissipation of assets, and the definition is almost boringly practical, using marital money in a way that gives no benefit to the marriage. Spending on an affair is one of the most common textbook examples there is. The hotel rooms, the dinners, the gifts, jewelry, electronics, cash, the trips. If your spouse spent marital money, money that was half yours, on the affair, a court can order that value reimbursed to you. Not as punishment for the affair, as a correction for the waste. And courts pay special attention when that spending happens during the breakdown of the marriage, and even more when someone tried to hide it. Quiet cash withdrawals, charges buried in a joint account. Now put that next to what happened at the coffee table, and the whole thing clicks into place. Because the person who could show me exactly what marital money had been spent, and where, and when, was sitting right across from me, holding her husband's statements, and I was holding my wife's. We didn't need to prove they were in love. We needed to prove what they'd spent, and between the two of us, we could see all of it. So let me show you the machine we accidentally built, and then the exact point where we chose not to break it. Dissipation cases live and die on documentation. Not feelings, not testimony about love, statements. Credit card charges showing the hotels and the dinners, bank transfers to the other person, gifts bought during the affair period, on marital money. The whole thing is an accounting problem wearing an emotional costume. And here's why two betrayed spouses are, together, so much stronger than either one alone, lawfully. My wife had been careful with the trail on her side. Charges I couldn't quite explain, a couple of cash withdrawals that didn't add up, gaps I could feel but not prove. On her own, my case for dissipation was a handful of suspicious-looking line items and a story. But the other woman was holding the matching side of every one of those transactions. The hotel I couldn't identify was on her husband's statement by name. The weekend my wife's spending spiked was the weekend his did too, at the same city. The gift I suspected but couldn't source, she'd found the receipt for its twin. Each of us had been staring at half a ledger and being told we were paranoid. Laid side by side, The two halves reconciled into one clear account of exactly how much marital money, hers and mine, had gone into this. And every bit of it was lawfully held. She wasn't giving me anything she'd stolen. She was giving me what was already hers to read, and I was giving her mine. Two people, each entitled to their own records, comparing them at a table. There is nothing illegal about that. It's just unusual, because people in our position are usually too busy hating each other to try it. Now, the line. The moment I promised you. There was a point in that second conversation where it could have tipped, where let's understand what happened could have become, let's make them pay. She mentioned, half joking, that she still knew her husband's email password. And there was a second, I'll be honest, where the wounded part of me wanted to say, do it, get everything. I said no. And not because I'm a saint. Because I'd done my homework, and I knew that the instant either of us accessed an account we weren't authorized to touch, we'd converted every good thing on that table into poison. Illegally obtained evidence doesn't just get excluded. It can be a crime, and it hands the other side a weapon. We'd have taken two strong, clean, lawful cases and lit them both on fire for the momentary satisfaction of snooping. So we drew the line, out loud, together. We would share what we each already had, lawfully. We would each take it to our own lawyers, and we would not, under any circumstances, go get anything either of us wasn't entitled to. The temptation to escalate is the exact thing that turns a strong case into a disaster. I've made a whole video on the man who torched his own settlement in a single night, and I wasn't going to become him at a coffee table. That decision, the restraint, is the part I'm actually proud of, not the intel. Anybody can gather intel when they're angry. The discipline to gather only what's yours and stop precisely there is the rare thing. And here's the human coda, because it's the part that stayed with me longest. Before we left, she said something I think about all the time. She said, I keep waiting to feel like I won something. I don't. I just feel less crazy. And that was it exactly. We hadn't teamed up to destroy anyone. Two people who'd been quietly gaslit for months had simply given each other back the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is not the same thing as revenge. It's calmer than that. It's more useful than that. And it lasts longer. We each got our divorce on clean terms with our own lawyers, on documentation that was lawfully ours. Neither of us ever had to prove the affair to a judge. We just had to prove the spending. And we walked away not as co-conspirators, but as two people who'd been kind to each other on the worst day of both our years. So here's what I actually want you to take from the table, because it isn't find the other spouse and gang up. It's this. When you're being betrayed and lied to at the same time, cheated on, and told you're imagining it, the thing that's destroying you isn't only the betrayal, it's the isolation. You're carrying a truth that the one person who could confirm it is actively denying. That's a specific kind of madness, and it's engineered. The other betrayed spouse breaks that isolation like nothing else can. Not because they're your ally in a war, because they're the only other person on earth standing where you're standing, seeing what you're seeing, holding the matching half of your evidence and the matching half of your loneliness. For months, each of us had been the crazy one in our own home. For 45 minutes, we were just two sane people looking at the same facts. I can't overstate what that did for me. It was the moment I stopped doubting my own mind. And the practical lesson rides on top of the human one. If there's real proof to be had, it's usually financial, not romantic. And it's often split between two households, each holding their lawful half. Two people comparing what's already theirs can see a picture neither could see alone. That's not a conspiracy. That's just corroboration. And corroboration is the most ordinary, powerful thing in the legal world. But the restraint is the whole game. The version of this that works is boring. Share what's yours, take it to a lawyer, stop at the line. The version that feels amazing for one night and ruins you is the one where you decide, together, to go get what isn't yours. Same table, same two people, completely different endings. The only variable is whether you can sit in that much anger and still not cross the line. I could, barely, and only because I'd already watched other men fail to. The affair took my marriage. It did not get to take my judgment, too. And the woman across the table, who I'd braced myself to hate, turned out to be the person who helped me keep it. We were never on the same team. We were just, briefly, the only two people who told each other the truth. And on the worst day of a very bad year, that turned out to be the thing that mattered. So, 3 things to carry out of this, and none of them are get revenge. First, if someone reaches out claiming your spouses are involved, you don't have to make it a war. You can make it a conversation. Compare only what each of you already lawfully has: your own accounts, your own memories, things you were entitled to see. That alone can turn 2 paranoid, gaslit people into 2 people with a clear, corroborated picture. And the relief of no longer being alone with it is worth the coffee by itself. Second, aim at the money, not the affair. In most states, proving who cheated does little to your settlement. Proving what marital money got spent on the affair, the dissipation, can actually move it. That's an accounting case, and it's often exactly the case that 2 households together can document. Third, and this is the one that protects you, stop at the line. Share what's yours. Do not go get what isn't. The moment either of you touches an account you're not authorized to access, you've traded a strong, lawful case for a crime and a weapon in the other side's hand. The discipline to gather only what you're entitled to, and stop there, is the entire difference between winning and detonating. I walked into that coffee shop expecting the worst conversation of my life. I walked out with my sanity back, a clean case, and an odd, quiet respect for a stranger. Not a partner in revenge, just the only other person who'd tell me the truth. So let me ask you, if you got that phone call tomorrow, could you keep it a conversation and not turn it into a war? Tell me below. I read them.